What is up, people? Good to see you. Welcome to Cognitive Dissonance, the channel where we talk about the insane shit going on around us, and we just try to sort it out. Just trying to sort it out. That's all I'm trying to do here. We talk a lot about transhumanism here, and the potential downsides of using technology to alter the human condition. But today I want to talk about transgenics, or the taking of genetic material from one organism and then introducing it into another organism, right? Often this entails some kind of modification or genetic resequencing of the material before foreign introduction. I am sure you guys have all heard the term GMO. More specifically, I want to talk about something called molecular farming. So, what exactly is molecular farming? Well, essentially, it's getting plants to produce proteins that have commercial or pharmaceutical applications, industrial applications. These proteins are forced into production by genetically modifying the plant itself. Molecular farms, hey, they can be used to produce biofuels, different industrial enzymes, medicines, even vaccines, right? Plants, I mean, they produce a lot of biomass. They're cheap. They're fairly easy to grow, depending on your level of green thumb. And with the advent of technologies like CRISPR, precise gene editing opens up a lot of possibilities for people in the field. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I covered an article on Space Force News about potentially edible vaccines. Now, what I need you to understand is that a lot of this is not brand new. In 2012, the FDA actually approved a plant-made drug to treat Gaucher disease, which is a genetic condition that prevents the breakdown of fats inside the body. The drug they made was an injectable form of an enzyme that treats the condition, and it's grown in carrot cell cultures, which is actually kind of cool. And then even more recently, Canadian company Medicago has produced a candidate COVID-19 vaccine that's now in stage 3 clinical trials. They've got over 30,000 participants in this trial. This vaccine is being developed in an Australian weed that's actually kind of a relative to tobacco. It would still need to be injected. However, it will also be the first therapeutic protein for human use that is grown in a whole plant. like as opposed to a cell culture. Within 20 days of getting the virus genome, Medicago produced virus-like particles of the coronavirus. These mimic the outer structure of the virus, complete with the spike protein that the virus uses to hook its way into cells.
As we continue to address COVID-19, Canada is working with partners to make vaccines domestically. This includes Medicago, a biopharmaceutical company from Quebec that develops plant-based technology for vaccines and antibodies. Medicago is no stranger to fighting pandemics. In 2009, they produced a vaccine for H1N1 in just 19 days. They repeated the success, developing virus-like particles of the coronavirus in just 20 days. To deliver life-saving vaccines to Canadians, Medicago is building a new multi-million-dollar complex in Destimoville, Quebec. It will deliver up to 1 billion doses of pandemic vaccines per year. The new facility will increase Canada's manufacturing capacity for pandemic flus and variants, new vaccines, antibodies, and other therapeutics. Medicago recently submitted a vaccine candidate to Health Canada. If approved, it will be the first plant-based COVID-19 vaccine to be both developed and manufactured in Canada. This is just one of the projects the Government of Canada is supporting as we work to keep Canadians safe and build back better.
Oh, they're building back better, people. Building back better. Yeah, so apparently they're using an agrobacteria to facilitate the process, which are basically just bacterial microorganisms. They infect plants and then transfer some of their genes to them. It gives the plants genetic instructions to code for new proteins. They can also use plant viruses to force protein production. In the same way that we use viruses in gene therapy today, a plant virus can be modified to carry altered coding instructions to the plant. And this is a video from 2015. Dr. Nicole Steinmetz from Case Western Reserve has been working on this for quite some time, and she was actually giving a presentation just kind of describing the process.
So from molecular farming to molecular medicine, or from black-eyed peas to nanotechnology. So this slide shows how we produce plant viruses in the lab. We grow different types of plants. We grow cowpeas, tobacco plants, as well as lettuce. And we use two basic methods to infect the plants to produce the virus particles. On the left is shown a mechanical inoculation where we take purified virus particles and we gently rub them onto the leaves. As soon as the virus enters the first plant cell, it will start its replication process and will then spread out systemically throughout the plant. Now, if you take a look at the coloration of these leaves, they are uniformly green coloration, and this is an image of a plant taken 2 weeks after infection. So you see the very typical mosaic symptoms, and these are caused by the cowpea mosaic virus. Another plant that we use is a type of tobacco plant, and shown here a different type of infection where we make use of a bacterium called Agrobacterium, and we gently inject these bacteria containing the genetic information of the virus into the leaves. As soon as the virus enters the leaves, it will start its replication process and it will spread throughout the plant. So we use the plant as a manufacturing assembly line in a way to produce highly reproducible plant virus-based nanoparticles. Because these materials are genetically encoded, each particle essentially is a clone of itself, we get very high quality control of these materials. We can also produce them in quite high yields. So if we set up around 20 plants, maybe just the size of this podium, we would yield 100 grams of leaf material, so a big Ziploc bag full of leaves. We can store these leaves indefinitely at -80. The plant virus will be stable, being frozen down. And we can then purify the particles whenever we need particles. And we do this by first homogenizing the material in a household blender, making a smoothie, and then processing through several protein extraction steps until we end up with pure virus particles. And with the
I don't even know what to say about this next part, but I'm going to let you watch this. I'm going to let you watch this.
Collaboration with Krista Knight and Barry Brinegar, we actually have developed a music video highlighting these processes.
I needed a virus, one I could control, but I couldn't seem to find one around. Then I thought, plants. And I'm here to show you the formula that I found. In an incubation chamber, plant some seeds in a pot.
Come on, doctor, do the propagation.
When the seeds are ready, look and see what you've got.
Come on, doctor, do the propagation.
Put the virus on your hands and rub it onto the leaves. Check out all the plants for symptoms of the disease. Then step one is done. Virus propagation complete. You've got to rub those leaves, yeah. Not too hard. Step back. Just like that. Oh yeah, I think you've got the knack. Now we've got a lot of plant virus. What are we going to do with a lot of plant virus? Harvest all your leaves and toss them into a blender.
Come on, doctor, do the purification.
Put the mixture in a centrifuge and see what it renders.
Come on, doctor, do the purification.
Separated molecules are free of pollution. Find the viral envelope with mixing solutions. Then step two is through. Purification complete. You've got to pick those leaves, yeah. Blend them up. Not too much. Just like that. Oh yeah, I think you got the knack. Pure isolated virus.
Well, I think.
So, yeah, about that. She seems really smart, so I have no clue why she thought the whole, like, Dr. Nefario or Robotnik shit was a good idea to show to a bunch of old folks at a symposium, but, you know, to each their own, I guess. She I can't even with it. Like, this whole mad scientist shit, this is the problem. She was adamant in her talk that, you know, plant viruses cannot affect humans, but wouldn't that be in their natural form? I mean, are we certain? You know, once we start changing the coding of these viruses, how do we know there's not going to be any mutations? You know, how do we know they won't affect plant types that they weren't initially intended to affect, or get into the water system, or affect animal life, or insect life, for that matter? You know, I don't know. I'm just asking. This really opens up the larger question of the problems with GMOs in general. I mean, look at the GMO mosquito failure in Brazil, for example. Okay, Bill Gates and Oxitec. You know, always with Bill Gates, man. Bill Gates and Oxitec had genetically modified your average mosquito, right, that they released into a population of native mosquitoes in Brazil. Now, these two, the modified mosquito and the native mosquitoes, were supposed to breed and then have an offspring that was weaker, that would die out, and thus prevent the spreading of malaria. But this is not what happened, right? And they said that they had there was unexpected results. There were unintended consequences of the gene manipulation. They essentially were breeding like super mosquitoes. Okay, this is when you start messing around with stuff, because a lot of this stuff isn't, you know, genes aren't like most genes aren't like an on and off switch where there's one gene for one specific thing. There are usually multiple genes that feed into the expression of a trait. Okay, so sometimes flipping the switch on one, you might have cascade effects on other things. We don't know yet. You know, so I question these people that think that it's impossible for them to ever get anything wrong. And I am not completely against this tech. I'm not like a Luddite. I'm not over here like total anti-tech. I don't trust power structures. It's the people in charge of these things, and I'm going to get to that. But I mean, science for the sake of science. Okay, there are some lines we shouldn't cross, and especially until we have a full and comprehensive understanding of the potential outcomes, right? But I mean that shit with the mosquitoes in Brazil is just a prime example, and now they're going to be releasing these things into the U.S. like what was it, Texas and Florida? Yeah, I hope they hope they got that figured out. Um, yeah, but we don't know the long term effects in the plant or animal or human population for this. Um, I just don't know, guys. In any case, so there was a new article published in Science a couple of weeks ago suggesting making actually edible vaccines, which, considering where we are with the damn whole vaccine mandate thing, is really kind of a scary proposition to me at the moment. These two doctors, Dr. Hubavendo and Gary Kolbinger, they suggested that plants themselves could be turned into edible medicines, which has a lot of, practical applications. But like, for instance, rather than insulin shots, right? People with diabetes could, just eat a tomato. Um, or instead of getting a flu jab, you could, munch on some corn. And what's even worse, as far as I'm concerned, is that the maddest of all mad scientists at DARPA, right, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, have now financed 3 massive facilities to optimize plant-made vaccines. Okay, and from this article, they say, if the idea of eating a vaccine grosses you out, there's precedent. One type of polio vaccine, which contains a weakened virus, as an edible, was once used in widely wiping out the virus. However, in a 6-year span, at the turn of the century, and I'm looking for this in the article here, guys. And in a 6-year span at the turn of the century, a slew of plant-based edible vaccines against Hep B, rabies, the norovirus became pioneers and then martyrs of that goal, because the proportion of immunized individuals who generated an immune response from this ended up being disappointingly lower than in the clinical trials involving standard vaccines that were administered, the authors said. That's changing. I mean, like I said, with the rise of CRISPR and other precision gene editing tools, edible plant-made vaccines could now generate meaningful immune responses from people. Several recent tests tried using a vaccine shot as the first dose with an edible plant-based vaccine derived from like rice or cereals or corn as a booster. And as a matter of fact, this is just a partial list of some of the products that are in development. I mean, they're in a variety of clinical trial statuses as far as their phases go. And they're looking to treat everything from like HIV to Ebola to gastroenteritis, I mean, rotavirus, seasonal flu, pandemic influenza, to diarrhea. And they're using tobacco, they use rice, moss, potato, tomato, barley. So there's a varied collection of products that are in developmental stages right now using this tech. Um, and like they said, I mean, there was precedent. But for now, edible plant-based therapeutics are still, in preclinical and mostly early phase trials, with the exception of Medicago's work. Um, and even when technologically possible, they'll also likely hit like roadblocks and protests. Like current animosity towards GMOs may carry over, the authors say. You think? I mean, can we really predict the potential socioeconomic or environmental impacts from this? What happens when farmers either can't or won't grow regular crops because this is more profitable. There will be competition for agricultural space if this is done en masse. We are already seeing massive issues in agriculture now. They're Agenda 2030, their initiatives on everything from farming to meat production to freaking forestry are affecting the food supply. And what kind of issues are we going to run into because of patents? I mean, it would be their like secret formula, right? Look at the issues now with the patented GMO Monsanto seeds. I mean, Monsanto was actually suing small farmers to protect their patents, even when the farmers weren't intentionally growing the shit. So, who knows? And what kind of biocontainment are we going to need for things that are genetically modified? Turns out I'm not the only one wondering these things. This was published in March of 2020. Okay, and they say this is peer reviewed, this is strong article. I have put links to some of the articles in the description below if you guys are interested and you want to go take a look. But these guys say flat out, some applications of molecular farming may pose risks to human health and the environment. Okay, unwanted gene flow from engineered crops could potentially contaminate the food supply and affect wildlife. There's also the potential for unwanted gene flow into engineered crops, which could alter the ability to produce their compounds of interest. And they address the need for what they call transgene biocontainment, right? I mean, just in the larger picture, we've already had some examples of what they call transgene escape, right? That some years ago, the company Protogene produced a transgenic corn that expressed a vaccine for preventing bacteria-induced diarrhea in pigs, okay? And while the vaccine protein itself was non-toxic to humans, it was to be strictly excluded from the human food chain. That was the rule. But what had happened was Protogene failed to eradicate the plants that they had seeded from their previous season's transgenic corn crop, and it led to the contamination of non-transgenic soybeans. Okay, so it got into the food supply. Then there was an issue with a company called Starlink, whose transgenic corn contaminated millions of tons of non-transgenic corn. I mean, to the point, and this was in the US, to the point that Japan and South Korea literally halted imports of US corn at that time because of it, right? So, man, there are a variety of other issues with this as well. I mean, they talk in here about the transfer of herbicide resistance genes to weeds, right? Including like invasive species of weeds that could increase the difficulty of eradicating these weeds. I mean, and then they say it's improbable, but a transgene could also spread from an engineered crop to a weed, and then from that weed to another crop. Now, I don't like when they use words like improbable, because that just makes me think of the damn mosquitoes, man. Like, when you're messing with genetics, I don't know if they've never seen like the Wrath of Khan or what, but you can't really predict what all this editing is going to do. We're not there yet, guys. But yeah, so they're saying like, a transgene could spread from an engineered crop to a weed, and then from that weed to some other crop, right? And make its way into into different crops or supplies. I mean, in this way, weeds that contain the transgene could actually act kind of like a reservoir for the transgene and then spread it to non-genetically modified crops. In some cases, they say molecular farming could potentially pose a risk for humans or animals being harmed through inadvertent exposure to an unsafe level of recombinant protein. I mean, they're engineering these plants to hyperproduce and fill their biomass with some things that, at certain levels could be toxic or fatal. Right? And so this is just basically detailing the three main ways that transgenes can spread into the environment. You get volunteer plants, which are plants that have self-seeded from a previous season's crop. They could contaminate the next season's crop if they're accidentally harvested, like alongside the intended crop. Transgenes can also spread in seeds. They could be spilled, during the harvest and the transfer of seed. I mean, we've seen this with Monsanto. We've seen this. We've actually seen cases similar to this numerous times. And then lastly, there could be even cross-pollination. They could lead to transgenes escaping into neighborhood plants or introgression from neighboring plants into the transgenic crop. But as we're primarily concerned with the movement of genes into another population, clearly, I mean, pollen transfer would be the form of gene flow that's the most concerning here, right? To the point that they're actually considering underground farming for this, potentially in unused mines to control for containment. Okay? So, I mean, there are a lot of things to consider here. And, man, as we see organizations like the World Economic Forum and we hear about government funding from agencies like DARPA, I cannot help but to have some concerns with this, right? Everyone was sitting around watching Bill Gates buy up a shit ton of farmland. Bill Gates, the Gavi guy, right? And they're like, I wonder what he's going to do with that. I'm over here like, hello. As with any new technology, there's a ton of positive potential with this stuff. There's also a ton of potential for manipulation by the powers that be, right? I mean, as they continue to alter the food supply, integrate blockchain and tracking into agriculture, and as they sit outright and, attack the meat industry, I cannot help but to wonder. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. Guys, if you like my content and want to show support, you can donate directly at Loyal2ThaFoil.com or using my Cash App, which is in the description. Another great way to support this channel is by making a free Rokfin account. You can get access to all the free content on the platform. If you subscribe through my channel, it's $9.99 a month. You get not only my content, my premium content, but everybody on the platform. Get all their premium content too. It's a great way to support an actual free speech platform. Also, go to pill.net, make the free account, get the Foxhole app. The community on Foxhole it's my favorite place to hang out. So check that out too. Well, that is what I got for you guys today. Much love, and until next time.